Well, Darren, it's time to talk about pastures. And before we got going today, Darren just said, isn't it awfully late to be talking about pastures? But here's the thing, everything got delayed this year. So a lot of guys, even right now, are still wrapping up planting soybeans in the northern United States. And the way it works for most crop farmers is we get the crop in, we take care of the crop, and then, oh yeah, we got to do something about the pastures. And I think maybe we've got that a little bit mixed up. We need to invest a little more time and energy into those pastures. We can produce a lot more grass.
Well, here's the thing, Brian. Right away, early in the season, you've got an opportunity. And we talked in the wheat just a little bit about these plant growth hormones or plant growth regulators. There's a very good one that can be used in grassland. It's called Rise Up Smart Grass.
Yeah, we've tried that Rise Up on our own farm a couple different times. And where it really fits, where we've identified this, is real early in the spring or late in the fall. Basically, you can get an extra month of growth in the spring, or at least a couple weeks of growth in the spring, extra 2 to 4 weeks in the fall. It's not the type of product you want to go use in the middle of the summer or anything like that.
No,
you got to do it when it's cold.
It's mostly effective when it's 40 to 60 degrees at increasing plant growth. Yeah, once everything is good and you're 80 degrees every day, well, then it's not going to make much difference because naturally the plant really has ramped up all those levels of hormones itself. So you don't have to worry about that. But early in the season, you can get started in that pasture early. You can extend your grazing window just a little bit longer. And really, this can be used in crop ground too. We were seeing a benefit in corn and other crops. So it's kind of an exciting thing. The other cool thing, Brian, is it can be used whether you're an organic producer or not.
Yep.
That's kind of a neat thing too for guys that say, well, I'm really concerned about, I want to have grass-fed beef and I don't want any hormones or anything like that. This is totally different. We're talking about plants here, and this is approved, I believe, for most organic situations.
Okay, but here's the problem, Darren. If you're going to have an extra couple weeks of growth in the spring, extra couple weeks in the fall, you're going to have a little bit more fertility. And this is what we always encourage you to do: soil test, plant tissue test. And you say, well, I'm not going to do that for my pasture ground. But why not? You do it for your crop ground. Why not do it for your pasture ground? If your pH is out of whack, if you're missing one key nutrient, something like that, you could have a lot more good growth out there. It doesn't cost much money. Just take a few soil samples, pull a few plant tissue samples as you go throughout the year, and see what your crop really needs.
Well, I like this. Some guys will say, well, Grandpa never fertilized the pasture and Dad never fertilized the pasture. I said, wow, you really better fertilize that pasture then, because it's probably depleted. When you think about it, you've got animals out there that are feeding off this, and they're taking a lot of that away.
Well, maybe. If they're staying out there, then the manure is back out there, and that's fine. But still, you might be short on one thing. So I see a lot of guys just throwing nitrogen out. And don't get me wrong, that's very important. But all we're saying is at least do some soil testing and tissue testing, invest $100 or $200 and find out, hey, maybe I do need one other thing and I could have a lot more grass production.
I just kind of equate it to your lawn too. You look and you can see, some lawns that never get any fertilizer really don't look very good. And then you've got a lawn right next to it, maybe it's the next neighbor over in town and their lawn looks great because they're putting on plenty of fertilizer. I mean, you can see big differences in pastures too. When you're driving down a gravel road and on one side there's a pasture that doesn't look very good, and on the other side there's been some management done to it. One of those things may be fertility that's making more grass growth out there. They can have more animals per acre, which is a big deal too.
Well, there's another thing you may not have thought much about for pastures, and that is bug control. And I'm not saying we usually have all kinds of bugs out there that are causing a big problem, but you got two main issues. Number one, they're going to feed on the grass. Number two, they're going to cause problems for your livestock. Sevin and malathion, things like that. Just check the label, make sure it's labeled in your area, but consider an insecticide if you're seeing some bugs out
and
there.
Here's the other thing too. It's not just a great big pasture. It may be your ditches around your fields.
Well, that's a little bit different. If you're not going to graze them, then there are other insecticide options for
Yes.
you. Okay, the last thing, and what many farmers do focus on with pastures, is weed control. So we really have three main weed control options. That's Tordon, Milestone, and 2,4-D. I love the Tordon because it's got the most broad spectrum and the longest residual. So as long as you're not going to tear up your pasture and put it into crop ground anytime in the next 5 or 10 years, Tordon's probably a pretty good choice. Well, pasture management is important, especially since there are a few less acres of pasture, it seems like, just about every year for a variety of different reasons. And one of the issues that you might find out in your pasture too is our weed of the week. We'll tell you how to stop it coming up next.